Well, it's another week in the ACC. We had some surprises, some maybe not surprises, but impactful outcomes. We're going to dive into all of that. I have a separate video discussing Clemson, so I'll talk about Clemson a little bit here, but go see my channel, subscribe there. You can find the Clemson has regressed video there where I really dive and spend 10 minutes on it. I won't do that here. But I think we start at the bottom with Virginia Tech, the Hokies. Maybe it's just a sweet release for them. They got blown out by Old Dominion at home and Brent Pry's gone. We knew it was coming. Once they lost their first two games, it felt like this was inevitable. I actually predicted them to lose to Old Dominion, or at least said this was very, very possible. Maybe it's just best. They're done. They're moving on. The rest of the season is a wash. They're kind of hope they're baseball fans because their football season is pretty much no fun from here on out. If anything, they get Wofford next weekend. Maybe they start trying out an interim, but I assume they go external because this has been no good. So that's them. Virginia Tech is in our last spot now. Wake Forest was actually competitive with NC State, but lost on Thursday. They remain at 16. Boston College surprised me. They were 11 last week, and I expected them to go up. They went to Stanford, but they went to Stanford, scored all their points in one quarter, shut out the other three, and they got ran on bad by the Stanford Cardinal. And Stanford wins that game. So Stanford moves from 17, the last slot, all the way up to 14. They ran for 223 against Boston College, and they're kind of opposite. So Boston College, I really like quarterback Dylan Lonergan. He threw for 333, a touchdown and interception, but their defense isn't good and they can't run the ball. Stanford, their defense is maybe okay, but they can't pass the ball. But if they're running for 223 yards, that's fine. So very opposite teams, but I still think they're maybe not that different. But for now, Stanford goes ahead of them. In the sort of middle class of the ACC, or this is at least part of that tier, North Carolina, they didn't lose this week, and they actually finally got a blowout win. They blew out Richmond, so kudos to them. They were 15. They move up. Duke is maybe the biggest faller. I had them all the way up at 7. Didn't really ding them much after losing to Illinois. I thought that Illinois game was closer than it looked, and I think Illinois is a playoff team. I predicted them to get in the playoff from the very beginning, and maybe one of the few things I've gotten right. I think Illinois is really good. So didn't ding them for that. This week they went to Tulane, where they stole their quarterback, Darian Mensah, and Tulane with their new quarterback, the one that they got from BYU, Tulane beat them. Tulane went up and down the field on them. So maybe Duke's not as good as I thought. I thought that was a very troublesome spot for Clemson coming off a bye. Clemson's awful out of byes or open dates or openers. So basically anytime they get extra time. But Duke looking a little less scary. Although Clemson, as you'll see, looking a little bit more vulnerable. Pittsburgh, another team that has fallen. They seem pretty bad. They were 9 last week. A lot of people were high on them having a bounce back after they started 7-0 last year, then lost out. Well, this year they don't look so good. They lost to a West Virginia team that just prior had lost to Ohio, the Bobcats, not the Buckeyes. The prior week, Pitt couldn't run the ball on West Virginia. I wonder if it's time for Pitt to think about kind of a program reset because they seem like they're just stuck in mediocrity with their current program. Did they accept that? I don't know. I don't know that I would. And then above them, you have Virginia. Virginia ran for 359 on William & Mary. It's only William & Mary, but they won 55-16. So good bounce back for them after they lost to NC State in a non-conference game last week. Then I've got Syracuse and Clemson. So Syracuse at 9. Syracuse 2 weeks ago won in overtime against UConn. Not the most impressive thing, but love for Aaron Brown. Made them run sprints. They come out and they kill Colgate. So maybe it worked. Maybe Colgate's just bad. They are 16.5-point underdogs at Clemson this coming Saturday at noon. Kind of strange. Clemson's offense is pretty bad. I don't know that Clemson's going to score more than 28. So you're really saying that Syracuse's offense is going to do nothing at Clemson. I don't know if that's the case. Now, I do think Clemson's better than them. I think Clemson will win. I think Clemson should be favored, but it's clear to me. And again, I've got a separate video on this. Clemson has regressed. That really dives into the Clemson players. They brought so many guys back, and a lot of them got worse. And whether that's, I have no way of knowing if it's because they didn't work hard or because they're nervous because of all the hype. I maybe lean towards the latter. Or maybe a lot of guys just hit their ceiling and development in general can be a little overrated. And maybe it's better to buy a star than bet on some guy becoming a star because you can only reach your potential. You can't exceed your potential. That's kind of what potential means. But Clemson looks worse. And it starts with Cade Klubnik, who doesn't look like a draftable quarterback now. People were talking about him as a first rounder. He'll probably level out, but after 30 plus touchdowns to only 6 interceptions last year, he's at 3-3 this year. He's inaccurate. He's late. I didn't think he was horrible against Georgia Tech, but he had a really bad fumble. He had an interception that was, more of a great defensive play than a bad throw on his part, but he's been a bad quarterback, maybe a middle of the pack ACC quarterback. Definitely worse than a lot of these guys I'm about to put up on the board. Definitely worse than Darian Mensah at Duke, who's already on the board. So you're about to see a lot of guys or a lot of teams with better quarterbacks now, which is crazy. Another guy, TJ Parker, 1 sack on the season. TJ Moore, 70-something yards on the year. A lot of guys either didn't take steps or regressed. A lot of these guys coming back on the offensive line, 4 out of 5 starters return. Of course, Tristan Lee's been hurt, so you can call it 3, but no one looks better on the offensive line. They look the same or they look worse, and then you lost Marcus Tate, so the offensive line is worse. Matt Luke's a great offensive line coach. Can't really be him, I don't think. I mean, he was a super elite offensive line coach, so maybe it's something else. Maybe it's culture, maybe it's talent. So I think Clemson's still better than Syracuse. I think they win next week, but maybe not by 16.5. I have Cal above Clemson, which feels like a joke. I had them, 15, 16, 17 at the beginning of the year, but they're winning games. They lost everyone to the portal. They went out and bought a bunch of new players. They went and they beat Minnesota at home. Pretty impressive. They got a freshman quarterback from Hawaii. He seems maybe one of these guys who's better than Cade Klubnik, at least so far. So they're kind of proof that this whole transfer portal thing can work. Really, really impressed with them. Above them, I have NC State. And look, NC State doesn't have any great wins, but they're 3-0. They beat ECU, Virginia, and Wake Forest. All kind of close. But would you rather be 3-0 against okay teams, or you lost to a good LSU? You lost to a Georgia Tech. I mean, heck, LSU and Georgia Tech are better than ECU, Virginia, Wake Forest, but winning's a lot better than losing, and NC State keeps winning. So we'll see. Maybe they grow, they develop, and they end up by the end being in contention to make the ACC championship game. I don't think so. I'm not super high on CJ Bailey at quarterback, but not sure that he's playing any worse than Cade Klubnik. And I think they, without a doubt, deserve to be above Clemson right now. And then SMU, they sort of just, they got by a weak opponent, nothing crazy this week, but by virtue of not losing, they hopped Clemson as well. Then in the top tier, Louisville, I've been high on Louisville all year. They did have a closer than desired win over James Madison, but this week they were off, which again, being off is better than losing to Georgia Tech. So they move up. And then you have Georgia Tech, and I do not want to rain on their parade. They are a really, really tough team, really gritty, a lot of fight, really respect Brent Key. And I think they could go 11-0 before that Georgia game. Not going to pick them to beat Georgia, at least not yet, but they'll probably drop some game that they shouldn't. Maybe they'll lose at NC State. But honestly, at this point, 10 wins should be the bare minimum expectation. They go to NC State, might be their toughest game. Duke was looking like a tough one, but Duke doesn't look as tough now after losing to Illinois and Tulane. So Pittsburgh looks worse, right? So who's Georgia Tech losing to? It's got to be a fluke or maybe NC State. So I don't know why Georgia Tech has to lose an ACC game, but I'll pick them to go 10-2 or better. I think they maybe play for an ACC championship against the Florida State-Miami winner. So kudos to them. That being said, Haynes King was really inaccurate. A better passing quarterback, and they probably score 3 more touchdowns, or at least 3 more scoring drives. Whether they're all touchdowns, I don't know. But big missed third down opportunities on wide open guys. He runs the ball great. He ran for 100 yards, and most of those came in the second half and really down the stretch, really key. Obviously, their kicker is awesome. But this was about Clemson. Clemson is kind of mediocre. Georgia Tech is a little bit more than mediocre, and they have incredible guts and great special teams, and that's the difference. Plus, they were at home. So Georgia Tech, I think, is decisively better than Clemson. And honestly, Clemson's out-recruited Georgia Tech. Aside from Bryant Wesco, was that obvious? Did you look anywhere and say, well, Clemson's winning this battle because they just have more raw talent? Maybe they're not as tough. Maybe they're not as well-coached. Maybe they're not as clutch. But, boy, are they more talented. You saw it once when Wesco just outran everybody because he's a 5-star, just more talented. Other than that, I don't think I saw it once. Ethan McKinney, their left tackle, actually from just down the street from me, he was beating TJ Parker pretty consistently. He had 1 false start. Otherwise, he won the matchup. That's supposed to be our top 5 round draft pick. Peter Woods, another top 5, not draft or not round, but top 5 like pick period with Parker and Woods. Did he make a huge impact? Capehart did, but Peter Woods was fine. I don't really notice him much. So I thought Georgia Tech is one of the best teams in the ACC. I think they're the 3rd best, but I still thought that game was more about Clemson just not being good. So regardless, kudos to Georgia Tech. They belong this high. They're at 3, and maybe they'll be 2 if they keep winning. Then one of Miami and Florida State has to lose. So maybe Georgia Tech could even move up. And I think I'd probably pick Miami, Georgia Tech as my ACC championship game. Florida State had off, and they were already 2, so they stay there. And then Miami, dominant win over a ranked South Florida team. I think South Florida is good, at least good enough to beat Boise State and Florida. And Florida, at least good enough to be right there with LSU just as much as Clemson was. So pretty impressed with that. I think Miami is elite on the lines of scrimmage. I think Miami's really good. I think Miami's a playoff team. I think Miami maybe even could win playoff games if they keep this up. But I think there's 4 teams in the ACC vying for playoff spots at this point. SMU, NC State, Cal, Clemson, Syracuse maybe are decent. That next grouping in yellow, I'm a little less optimistic about them being decent, but maybe. And then 4 teams at the bottom, including Stanford, despite their win, might be pretty bad. Let me know what you think. Who have I shortchanged? Let me know your thoughts on Clemson. Be sure to go over to my channel, and I'll link it here as this video ends to my video about Clemson's regression so you can dive into that more. As always, thanks for watching, and go Tiger. Thank you to our sponsor, Ready Vets. If you live in the upstate and have a dog or cat that needs immediate care, Ready Vets is the place to go. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe.